I built my dad's business from the ground up, then he gave everything to my useless brother. 15 years of sweat, sacrifice, and keeping things running only for my dad to hand it all to the family freeloader. So I walked away. And within weeks, the company was in shambles. Now, I'm thriving, they're drowning, and I don't even look back. I was practically born into Taylor & Sons Plumbing. My father, Frank Taylor, started the company before I was even walking. It was the classic small-town success story, one guy with a van, a toolbox, and a dream. Over the years, through sheer grit and hard work, he built it into one of the biggest plumbing businesses in the area. By the time I was old enough to understand what a wrench was, Dad had a full crew of plumbers, a couple of office workers, and more jobs than he could handle. I grew up watching him bust his ass every day, fixing pipes, unclogging drains, and making a name for himself in the industry. Naturally, it was expected that I'd step into the family business someday. And honestly, I didn't mind. I liked the idea of building something meaningful, something that would last. So after high school, while my friends were off partying at college, I majored in business management, not because I had some grand plan of taking over, but because I wanted to actually know how to run a company properly. While I was buried in textbooks, studying accounting, marketing, and logistics, my younger brother, Matt, was living the kind of life you'd expect from a guy who peaked in high school. Matt and I were like night and day. I was the responsible one, the guy who did his homework, showed up on time, and took life seriously. Matt? He coasted through school, barely scraping by. He was the kid who never had to try because, somehow, things always worked out for him. While I was grinding through my degree, Matt was busy posting gym selfies, partying every weekend, and bouncing between dead-end jobs. It took him 6 years to finish a 2-year degree at a community college, and even then, he never really had a plan. He just assumed life would sort itself out. And Dad? He never called him out for it. If anything, he found it endearing. "Your brother's just trying to find his path," he'd say whenever I brought it up. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass to earn my place in the company, and no one was giving me a pat on the back for it. Climbing the ladder, the hard way. When I finally graduated, I didn't walk into a cushy office job. Dad believed in learning from the ground up. That meant spending 3 grueling years as a plumber's assistant, unclogging toilets, crawling under houses, working 60-hour weeks in the freezing cold and the blazing heat. I missed birthdays, weddings, and vacations because Dad drilled into me that the business comes first. I didn't date for years. Who had time? My world was pipes, schedules, and emergency calls at 2 a.m. But I took it seriously. I earned my master plumber's license, learned inventory management, handled scheduling, and optimized job assignments. Over time, I started seeing places where we could streamline operations, make things more efficient, and bring in more profit. By the time I was promoted to operations manager, I was the backbone of the business. I modernized our scheduling system. I optimized our inventory tracking so we stopped hemorrhaging money on lost tools and overstock. I boosted our online reviews from 3.5 stars to 4.8 by implementing a customer follow-up process. And in just 2 years, I helped increase revenue by 40%. For the first time in my life, I thought Dad actually saw my worth. Then Matt showed up. The return of the golden boy. Matt drifted through his 20s, bartending, partying, and mooching off Dad whenever he needed money. He never expressed the slightest interest in the family business. Then, one day, out of nowhere, he announced he was joining the company. And just like that, everything changed. Dad didn't make Matt work his way up like I did. He gave him an office with a window while I was still crammed into a converted supply closet. He handed him a fancy title, Director of Client Relations, which, in reality, meant taking clients to lunch and posting on social media. And the best part? He was earning 80% of my salary, despite the fact that I had been running this company for a decade. Matt rolled into work at 10 a.m., took 2-hour lunch breaks, and was gone by 4 p.m. because traffic was bad. He had no clue what he was doing, but it didn't matter. Dad was thrilled that his golden boy was finally part of the family legacy. And me? I was expected to keep everything running in the background while Matt played the role of heir to the throne. But the worst part? No matter how much I did, I was invisible. At every staff meeting, Dad would gush about Matt's contributions like signing some minor contract, while completely ignoring the fact that I had just saved the company $50,000 per year by optimizing our billing system. It was like no matter what I did, I would never be enough. And deep down, I knew it. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the end. First, I tried to convince myself that Matt's presence at the company was just another one of his phases. I'd seen this pattern before. He'd get obsessed with something for a few months, act like it was his life's calling, then lose interest and move on. Bartending, personal training, real estate. He once tried to launch a podcast but quit after 3 episodes. So I figured this working for the family business thing would go the same way. He'd show up late, half-ass it, then get bored and move on. But then Dad started treating him differently. A few months into Matt's career at the company, Dad gathered the team for a big announcement. "I'm proud to say that Matt is officially stepping into a leadership role," he said, clapping a hand on Matt's shoulder like he'd just discovered the next Steve Jobs. "Starting today, he's being promoted to Vice President of Client Relations." The room was silent. First of all, Vice President? We weren't some corporate empire with a board of directors. We were a plumbing company with 15 plumbers and a front desk assistant. The title was meaningless, but Dad acted like Matt had earned it. Second, what the hell had Matt even done to deserve a promotion? He'd signed one new contract, a local restaurant that needed plumbing repairs. And somehow that was enough to justify a VP title and a raise. Meanwhile, I had spent years working behind the scenes, making sure jobs ran on time, employees got paid, and customers stayed happy. Dad never called a meeting when I got promoted to operations manager. He never even announced it. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just about Matt helping out. This was Dad grooming him to take over. I tried to push the thought away, but then came the second gut punch. A week later, I was walking past Dad's office when I overheard him talking to Matt. "When you take over the company, you'll need to understand the finances," he was saying. I froze in my tracks. "When Matt takes over?" I waited for Dad to say something like, "We'll talk to Ryan about the books," or "Maybe your brother can help with that." But my name never came up. Not even once. 15 years of breaking my back for this business. 15 years of doing everything right. And I wasn't even being considered? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I spent my entire adult life building this company, modernizing it, growing it, making it profitable. Matt spent his 20s drinking beer and posting gym selfies. But somehow he was the one Dad saw as the future. That's when I knew. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I was never going to be the heir to this business. Dad had already made his choice. I kept my mouth shut. What was the point? I knew exactly how that conversation would go. Dad would just shrug it off, tell me I was misunderstanding things, and make some excuse about how I was too focused on work to see the bigger picture. So instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I stopped trying. I quit staying late to fix problems Matt caused. I quit volunteering to handle extra work. I quit going above and beyond. For the first time in 15 years, I let myself stop caring. But I didn't quit, not yet. I was waiting for the right moment. Because deep down, I knew something bigger was coming. And when it did, I'd be ready to walk away for good. Julie walked into the office one Monday morning, and from the second she introduced herself, I knew she was different. She had this quiet confidence, like she knew exactly what she was doing and didn't need to prove it to anyone. Dark hair always pulled back in a neat bun, sharp green eyes that seemed to catch every detail, and a kind of effortless professionalism that made her stand out. She wasn't the type of girl Matt usually went for. No fake tan, no influencer vibe, no over-the-top Instagram poses. Just smart, put together, and undeniably competent. Her resume was impressive: business degree, years of experience managing offices in much bigger companies than ours, and certifications in accounting software that I'd been begging Dad to invest in for years. The moment she started working, everything in the office improved. By the end of her first week, she had reorganized our entire filing system, clearing out decades of poorly labeled paperwork. By her second week, she found over $20,000 in unpaid invoices and managed to collect nearly all of it. By her third week, she convinced Dad to invest in a scheduling software that I had been pushing for since the moment I became operations manager. Things I had spent years fighting for, she got done in days. It was impossible not to be impressed. At first, our conversations were purely work-related. We'd chat in the break room about schedules, vendors, customer follow-ups. Then we started realizing we had a lot in common. True crime podcasts, hiking, old movies, even the same weirdly specific taste in books. She was easy to talk to, nothing like the painful small talk I had to suffer through on the rare occasions I actually tried dating. She got my sense of humor, and I actually looked forward to seeing her every day. It felt like, for the first time in a long time, something in my life was finally going right. After a few months, I worked up the nerve to ask her out. Friday night, the new Thai place downtown, somewhere that wasn't the office, somewhere that didn't involve break room lunches in plastic containers. She smiled in this way that made me feel like maybe for once I wasn't just the guy keeping things running in the background. She said yes immediately, no hesitation, and for the first time in years I actually felt excited about something that had nothing to do with work. I didn't tell anyone. My family had a habit of ruining good things for me, and I wanted to keep this to myself at least until I knew where it was going. That turned out to be a huge mistake. 2 days before our date, I walked into the hallway and heard Julie laughing. Not just polite, professional laughing, but real, genuine laughter, the kind I had spent weeks trying to earn. I turned the corner and there she was, standing way too close to Matt at the coffee machine. He was doing that thing where he leaned against the wall, looking relaxed and charming, showing her something on his phone while she smiled up at him like he was the most interesting person in the world. "Hey Ryan," Matt said, as if we were just two normal brothers having a casual conversation and not rivals in a never-ending competition I never signed up for. Just showing Julie some kayaking pics from last weekend. Kayaking. Matt, the guy who once complained about having to walk from his car to a restaurant in the rain. Matt, who asked me once if the river near our house had those fish things in it. He had never touched a kayak in his life, but now he was suddenly an outdoorsman. Julie glanced at me and smiled, but it wasn't the same kind of smile. It was polite, distant, not the warm, interested look she used to give me. "These are amazing," she said, turning back to Matt. "I've always wanted to try kayaking but never had the chance." "You should come with me sometime," Matt said smoothly. "It's really peaceful out on the water." I felt like I was watching a slow-motion car crash, powerless to do anything about it. Julie turned to me, still smiling. "Ryan, I didn't know your brother was so into outdoor activities." "Neither did I," muttered, but they had already gone back to looking at his phone, laughing at something I wasn't a part of. The next day, Julie found me alone in the break room. My heart skipped for half a second, thinking maybe I had imagined the whole thing, maybe things weren't what they looked like. She shifted awkwardly, hesitating before speaking. "About Friday." I already knew what was coming. "I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. Something came up." Something came up. The universal translation for "I got a better offer." I forced a shrug, trying to sound like I didn't care. "No problem. Maybe another time." "Definitely," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There wouldn't be another time. I found out later through office gossip that she and Matt went on their first date that Friday night. The same Friday night I was supposed to take her out. At the same Thai restaurant I had picked. The next week was hell. Matt strutted around the office like he had won a competition. Julie blushed every time he walked by, and every time I entered a room, whispered conversations would suddenly stop. Matt casually mentioned their date during a staff meeting, making sure everyone knew about it. It was humiliating. I should have been used to it by then. Every time I tried to build something for myself, Matt took it like it was never mine in the first place. And it wasn't even Julie that hurt the most. It was the realization that, no matter what, Matt would always take whatever he wanted. And no one, not even my own father, would ever stop him. And of course, things only got worse. 15 years of my life had gone into this company. 15 years of missed weekends, late-night emergency calls, canceled plans, and exhaustion so deep it felt like I was running on autopilot most days. But finally, it looked like all that effort was paying off. Dad called for a company-wide meeting, and I was expecting another routine discussion about schedules or upcoming contracts. Instead, he stood up in front of everyone with a proud look on his face and cleared his throat. "I want to take a moment to recognize someone who has been with us for a long time," he said. My heart picked up just a little. Ryan has been an essential part of this company's success, and today, I'm happy to officially promote him to Senior Operations Manager. There was polite applause. I forced myself to smile. It wasn't like I was expecting balloons to drop from the ceiling, but still, this was 15 years in the making. Dad continued, "This promotion comes with increased responsibilities, of course, but also a well-deserved raise." And he smiled like he was delivering the biggest news of the century. "We just bought a new company truck. Ryan will be getting the keys to the Ford F-250 we picked up last week." Now that caught my attention. The company had never provided me with a vehicle before. I'd been driving my personal truck, an old Chevy that was being held together with duct tape and sheer willpower. Having a company-issued, Fully maintained truck wasn't just a perk, it was a necessity for my job. For a brief moment, I let myself feel proud. It felt like an acknowledgement that I was actually irreplaceable, that all my hard work had meant something. That feeling lasted exactly 5 days. Fast forward to Sunday dinner. Mom had gone all out, pot roast, mashed potatoes, the works. We were halfway through the meal when Dad set down his fork and cleared his throat. "I've got an announcement to make," he said. I should have known. In my family, announcements were never good news. Matt and Julie exchanged a look across the table, and suddenly, I knew exactly what was coming before they even opened their mouths. "We're engaged," Julie beamed, holding up her left hand to show off a diamond that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Mom gasped, clapping her hands together, and Dad reached over to pat Matt on the back. The whole table erupted into congratulations while I sat there frozen, my fork still halfway to my mouth. "This is wonderful news," Dad said, still grinning. "My boy's finally settling down, starting a family." Then he turned to Matt and dropped the real bombshell. "And because of that, I've decided that you and Julie could use that new truck more than the company could. Consider it an engagement present." I felt my stomach drop. Matt put on his best surprised but grateful face, the same fake humility he always used when he got something he didn't earn. "Wow, Dad. That's so generous." I found my voice barely. "Dad, that truck was supposed to be part of my promotion." Dad waved a hand dismissively as if I was making a big deal out of nothing. "Now Ryan, don't be selfish. Your brother is starting a family. He needs a reliable vehicle." I clenched my fists under the table. "Starting a family? He's been engaged for 5 minutes. That truck is for company use," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I need it for work. That's why it was part of my promotion." "It still runs, doesn't it?" Dad said, completely ignoring my point. "You've been managing just fine without it. It's not like you need anything fancy." I looked around the table, waiting for someone, Mom, Julie, literally anyone, to step in and say something. But no one did. They were all too busy gushing about wedding plans in the future. I was done. I had spent 15 years killing myself for this company, doing everything right, proving my worth over and over again, only for my father to hand over everything to Matt on a silver platter, just like he always had. I barely made it through the rest of the meal without losing it. The second I got home, I threw my keys onto the counter, sat down at my laptop, and opened my email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a few seconds. Then, without thinking twice, I started typing. Subject: my resignation. Dad, I'm resigning from Taylor & Sons Plumbing, effective immediately. Consider this my 2-week notice, though realistically you'll be lucky if I make it through the week. I plan to pursue other options. Sincerely. Not really. Ryan Taylor. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Then for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. The email had barely been sent for 5 minutes before my phone started blowing up. First it was Dad, then Matt, then Mom. I ignored all of them, watching as call after call rolled in, voicemail after voicemail stacking up. I didn't need to listen to them to know exactly what they were saying. Dad would be furious, calling me ungrateful, telling me I was being emotional and overreacting. Matt would be pretending to be confused, acting like this had come out of nowhere. Mom would be crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. Same script, different crisis. I turned off my phone, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. The rage was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, but underneath that was something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. For the first time since I was 18, I didn't have to wake up tomorrow and deal with my father's favoritism, Matt's smug incompetence, or the never-ending feeling that no matter what I did, I would never be enough. I was free. I spent the rest of the night updating my resume, pouring myself a drink, and deciding that I wasn't going to waste another second of my life waiting for people to value me. If my own father couldn't see my worth, I'd find someone who could. By the time I went to bed, I had already sent out 3 job applications. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I was jolted awake by someone pounding on my front door. I didn't have to check the peephole to know who it was. "Ryan, open the damn door." Dad's voice was loud enough to wake the entire building. I took my time getting up, stretching, making a cup of coffee just to make a point. By the time I finally opened the door, still in my pajamas, Dad looked like he was about to combust. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, shoving his phone in my face, the email still open on the screen. "Quitting." Over email? After everything this family has done for you? I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Done for me? I repeated, shaking my head. You mean like paying me less than market value for 15 years? Or maybe giving my promotion bonus to Matt? Or wait, was it when you decided I wasn't even a consideration to take over the company? Dad's face turned red. That's different. Matt's starting a family. He needs our support. And I don't. I stepped back, crossing my arms. I've been supporting this family for years, Dad. Who do you think keeps the business running while Matt is out taking 2-hour lunches and playing on Instagram? You will not talk about your brother like that, he snapped. Matt brings in clients. He's the face of the company. And I'm what? I shot back. The workhorse? The guy who actually gets things done while Matt takes all the credit. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. You don't need me, Dad. You've got Matt. Let him run your damn business. I moved to close the door, but Dad stuck his foot in the way, his expression hard. You walk away from this company. You walk away from this family. I met his eyes, my voice steady. If this is how family treats each other, maybe that's for the best. I pushed the door just hard enough that he had to move his foot or risk breaking it. He stood there for a second, seething, then stomped off down the hall. I watched through the peephole as he got into his truck, slammed the door, and peeled out of the parking lot. Not even an hour later, Matt showed up. I didn't even bother opening the door. Come on, bro, he called through it, his voice all fake concern. Don't be like this. Everyone's worried about you. I barked out a laugh. Go away, Matt. You're really gonna throw away 15 years over a truck? I rolled my eyes. That's what this was to him. A truck. Not years of being treated like an afterthought, not watching him get everything handed to him while I had to earn every scrap, just a damn truck. He knocked again. Look, if this is about the scheduling system, I just need your login. Dad can't figure it out. That made me smile. Not my problem. A beat of silence, then a frustrated sigh. You're being dramatic, man. I turned on the shower just to drown him out. Mom called next. She cried like I knew she would. Told me Dad was heartbroken, that the business was in chaos, that Matt was really trying but struggling without me. What she didn't say, what she never said, was that they were sorry. That Dad had made a mistake. That maybe, just maybe, I had been right to leave. I let her talk, let her guilt trip. Let her beg me to come to Sunday dinner so we could figure things out. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future, I said flatly. She sniffled. Ryan, please don't do this to the family. I didn't do this. I hung up before she could argue. The crazy thing was, finding a new job was easier than I expected. By the end of the week, I had 3 interviews lined up. All with bigger, more professional companies than my dad's. 2 of them made offers. I took the one with Wilson Plumbing and Heating, a smaller but rapidly growing competitor across town. The owner, Dave Wilson, had heard of me, knew my work, and wanted me on his team. He even put a partnership track in writing. After 2 years, I'd have the opportunity to buy in and become part owner. It took my dad 15 years to never once consider giving me a stake in the company. Dave offered it in my first interview. And the best part? They gave me a brand new Ford F-350 Super Duty, fully loaded, with the company logo on the side. Better than the truck my dad had taken from me. The first thing I did when I got it? Drove past my parents' house. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? You have no idea. Meanwhile, Taylor & Sons was falling apart without me. The first week after I left, I got a few texts from some of the guys at work. At first, they were casual, just checking in, asking if I was really gone for good. Then the messages changed. Apparently, Dad had decided he could handle operations himself, like he hadn't spent the last 15 years avoiding the day-to-day work. He had no idea how to use the scheduling system I had put in place, couldn't keep track of which plumbers were assigned to which jobs, and within days, he had accidentally scheduled 3 different crews for the same project while leaving another major contract completely uncovered. The hospital contract, the one I had personally managed for years, was the first to go. The job required precision, tight deadlines, compliance paperwork, emergency availability, and without me running things, it was a disaster. They pulled out by the end of the week. That was a $50,000 a year contract gone. Week 2, Dad realized he was in over his head, So he did the one thing I knew was coming. He put Matt in charge. Matt, who had never managed anything in his life. Matt, who couldn't even remember to renew his own car registration, was now responsible for overseeing 15 plumbers, managing inventory, and handling customer contracts. According to Steve, one of the senior guys, Matt showed up late every day, spent half his time on his phone, and when people asked him questions, he either gave them the wrong answer or told them to figure it out themselves. He tried to pull the whole cool boss routine, but nobody was buying it. The second largest commercial client, a chain of restaurants that relied on us for maintenance, was up for contract renewal. I had prepped all the paperwork before I left. All Matt had to do was submit it. He didn't. They went with another company. Another $60,000 contract gone. By week 3, the dominoes were really starting to fall. The office was in complete chaos. One of the front desk employees quit because Matt kept blaming her for his mistakes. Accounts receivable were piling up because no one was invoicing customers on time. That was another thing I had handled without anyone realizing how important it was. By the end of the month, payroll was a mess. Dad had to take out a short-term loan just to cover wages. 3 weeks ago, the company was running smoothly. Now they were barely staying afloat. And Julie? She was still there, but barely. Steve told me she was pulling long hours, trying to keep things from completely falling apart. But Julie was an office manager, not an operations lead. She could organize files, answer phones, and handle paperwork, but she didn't know how to schedule emergency crews, manage inventory, or coordinate a team of plumbers with different certifications. She had no idea what she had walked into when she got involved with my family, but now she was stuck in it. Mom started texting me nonstop, but not to apologize. Every message was about how Dad was working 16-hour days trying to fix the schedule, how Matt was really trying but didn't understand my system, how clients were complaining, how everything was getting harder. But none of it came with any acknowledgement of why things were falling apart. No apology, no admission that maybe, just maybe, they had made a mistake. Just the usual Taylor family expectation that I would clean up the mess. Dad finally broke down and left me a voicemail. He sounded exhausted, slurring his words like he'd been drinking. "This business was fine before your fancy systems, and it'll be fine without them," he muttered. "You think you're irreplaceable? Nobody is." "Sure, Dad. Keep telling yourself that while your business circles the drain." Matt, on the other hand, went from acting like I was being dramatic to outright desperation. His first messages were fake concern. "Hey bro, everyone's worried about you." Then they turned into barely disguised panic. "Do you still have the login for the scheduling software? Dad can't find it." A day later, another message. "Seriously, dude, just tell me how you handled the Henderson site. Their project manager is freaking out." Then the last one, the one that actually made me laugh. "Hey man, the truck is making a weird noise. Any idea what's wrong?" The truck? The one that was supposed to be mine. The one Dad gave Matt as an engagement present. I didn't even reply. Not my truck. Not my problem. Julie sent exactly one email. It was long, full of apologies, saying she never meant to hurt me, that things with Matt just happened, and that she hoped we could still be friends. And almost as an afterthought, at the very end of the email she wrote, "If you have time, could you maybe put together a quick guide on how you handled scheduling? We're having some issues." I deleted it without responding. Not my circus. Not my monkeys. Meanwhile, I had been at Wilson Plumbing for 2 weeks, and it felt like stepping into another world. Dave, the owner, actually listened to my ideas. He didn't just nod and ignore me, he asked for my input and then implemented it. The guys respected me because of my experience, not because I was the boss's son. On my second day, I optimized their service call routing system. Dave was so impressed that he gave me a bonus on the spot. A bonus for just doing my job well. Imagine that. Then there was Kate. I met her at a job site while we were working on a new office building. She was an architect, sharp, funny, and completely no-nonsense. We hit it off immediately. Unlike Julie, she wasn't caught up in appearances. She didn't play games. By our third date, we were hiking to a waterfall I had wanted to see for years. Just two people who actually enjoyed each other's company. At one point, I showed her some of the frantic messages from my family, and she just shook her head. "They had gold," she said simply. "And they treated it like dirt. Their loss." Then she kissed me, and for the first time in months I completely forgot about Taylor and Sons Plumbing. Maybe for good. Kate and I were at the hardware store picking up supplies for my bathroom renovation when I heard someone call my name. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. I recognized the voice instantly. Julie. I turned and saw her standing near the aisle, looking almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should have said anything. She looked different. Tired. Like she hadn't been sleeping well. And standing next to her, holding a small shopping basket and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, was Matt. For a second I debated just walking away. I didn't owe them anything. But Kate was already looking between us, sizing up the situation, and I wasn't about to act like I was afraid of either of them. Julie. Matt, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Matt forced a smirk, the same cocky, effortless expression he had used his whole life, but there was something off about it now. It wasn't as sure of itself. Hey bro, he said, shifting the basket in his hand like he was suddenly self-conscious. Julie, on the other hand, looked at Kate immediately, her gaze flicking to the way our hands were casually linked. She recovered quickly, offering a polite smile. How have you been? Good. Really good, I said, not offering anything more. This is Kate. Kate, always the pro, gave them a quick but firm handshake, flashing her easy confidence. Nice to meet you both. I've heard a lot about you. Matt's smirk faltered, and Julie's polite smile wavered for just a second. They both knew exactly what that meant. Julie's eyes flicked back to Kate. Renovating, she asked, gesturing toward the supplies in my hands. Ryan's bathroom, Kate answered before I could. I'm an architect, so I'm handling the design. There was a flicker of something on Julie's face, something close to realization, or maybe just regret. An architect? That's impressive. I didn't say anything, just let the silence stretch. It was Matt who caved first. He exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. So, you still at Wilson Plumbing? I met his eyes and let the silence drag for just a second too long before answering. Yeah. It's great. He nodded, shifting uncomfortably. Cool. That's good. More silence. Matt looked like he was trying to figure out what to say next, but Julie beat him to it. Can I talk to you for a second? She asked, her voice softer, more hesitant. Kate looked at me, silently asking if I wanted to entertain this. I gave her hand a quick squeeze and nodded before she stepped a few feet away, pretending to check out a display while keeping an eye on us. Julie sighed, glancing at Matt, who was pretending to be very interested in a shelf of drill bits. Then she looked back at me. Look, I wanted to say I'm sorry. About everything. I know things didn't happen the way they should have, and she paused, searching for words. I didn't mean to come between you and your brother. I almost laughed, not in a cruel way, but in an exhausted, you really don't get it, do you? kind of way. You weren't the problem, Julie, I said simply. You were just a symptom of a much bigger problem. She bit her lip, glancing at Kate again. She seems nice. We're great, I said without hesitation. She sees me for who I am. Julie nodded, looking down at her hands. I didn't know if she really understood what I meant, but it didn't matter. Whatever this moment was supposed to be, it wasn't for her. It was for me. And the thing was, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Kate must have sensed it because she reappeared at my side like it was perfectly timed. Ready? Yeah, I said, turning back to Julie. Take care of yourself. She hesitated, then nodded. You too. I didn't say anything to Matt, didn't give him any acknowledgement. He didn't deserve it. Kate and I walked away, and I didn't look back. I was driving home with Kate when my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Then another. By the fourth one, Kate just shook her head and smirked. You gonna answer, or do I get to enjoy watching you ignore them all night? I exhaled, knowing that if I didn't pick up, she'd probably just keep calling. I tapped the screen and put it on speaker. Ryan, Mom's voice came through thick with emotion, the kind she always used when she wanted me to feel guilty. Please just listen. Your father is struggling. The business isn't the same without you. Matt's doing his best, but he's overwhelmed. Clients are leaving. She broke off with a shaky breath like she was trying not to cry. We need you. I didn't say anything at first, just let the weight of those words settle. We need you. Not we were wrong. Not we should have treated you better. Just we need you now that everything's falling apart. Mom, I said finally, keeping my voice calm, you don't need me. You need someone to clean up the mess Dad and Matt made. That's not fair, she insisted, sniffling. Your father has worked so hard for this business and he's exhausted. Ryan, please at least come to dinner. We can talk. I glanced at Kate, who just raised an eyebrow, waiting to see what I'd say. I didn't even have to think about it. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future. Mom inhaled sharply like I had physically slapped her. Ryan, don't do this to the family. I tightened my grip on the wheel and forced myself not to laugh at how predictable she was. I didn't do this. Silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't letting her guilt me into fixing things. I wasn't letting her words sink into my skin like they always had. I wasn't letting her win. She let out a shaky sigh. Okay. If that's how you feel, that's how I feel. I ended the call before she could say anything else. Kate reached over, lacing her fingers through mine. So you want me to say, I told you so, or would you rather just bask in the victory? I smirked, shaking my head. Definitely basking. That night, as we sat on the couch watching some ridiculous true crime documentary, Kate glanced at me and asked, would you ever go back? I didn't even need to think about it. Not even for a second. She smiled, satisfied with the answer, and I leaned back, exhaling slowly, realizing for the first time in my life that I was finally free. I settled into my new life faster than I expected. Wilson Plumbing wasn't just another job, it was the kind of place where people actually gave a damn. Dave, the owner, treated me like an equal from day one, asking for my input on operations, actually implementing my ideas instead of just nodding and ignoring me like Dad used to. The guys respected me, not because I was the boss's son, but because I knew what I was doing, because I had the experience to back it up. And the work? The work felt good. For the first time in my life, I wasn't drowning in stress, constantly waiting for the next disaster. The next moment when Dad would dismiss my hard work or Matt would swoop in and take credit for something he didn't do. I wasn't just keeping a broken system from falling apart. I was helping build something that actually worked. A month in, Dave pulled me into his office and handed me a file. This is the buy-in plan, he said. I meant it when I said I wanted you to have a stake in this company. Take your time, look it over, and if you're still interested, we'll talk next steps. I took the file home and sat with it for a long time, just staring at the numbers. 2 years. That's all it would take for me to become a part owner, something my own father had never even considered offering me after 15 years of loyalty. I didn't even have to think about it. Outside of work, things were even better. Kate wasn't just a breath of fresh air, she was everything I never realized I needed. She was real in a way that no one in my past had ever been. No games, no pretenses, no trying to impress people with a polished version of herself. She called me out on my nonsense, pushed me when I needed it, and never let me fall back into the habit of doubting my own worth. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't measuring my happiness by whether or not my father approved of me. I wasn't thinking about my family at all. One night, we were sitting on the porch after a long day, drinking beers and watching the sun go down, when Kate turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about them?" I knew exactly what she meant. I took a sip of my drink, exhaled slowly, and shook my head. Not really. She smiled like she already knew the answer. And the thing was, I wasn't lying. I had spent so many years chasing something I was never going to get, trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see me. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I didn't need them. I had built something better. A few months passed and I barely thought about Taylor and Sons. Life moved forward and for the first time it actually felt like it was mine. Work was solid, my relationship with Kate was easy in a way I had never experienced before, and every day I woke up without the weight of feeling like I had to prove something to people who would never appreciate it. Then one afternoon while I was driving back from a job site, I happened to pass by the old office. It wasn't intentional, I had taken a different route than usual and suddenly there it was. The building looked the same from the outside, but something felt off. The parking lot was half empty, and the usual stream of company trucks coming and going was nowhere to be seen. I slowed down just enough to take a look, and as if on cue, the front door opened. Matt stepped out, his phone pressed to his ear, looking like he was in the middle of some frantic conversation. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled like he had been wearing it for days. His usual confident swagger was gone, replaced with something closer to exhaustion. For a split second, our eyes met. I expected him to glare, maybe smirk like he always did when he thought he was winning, but he didn't. He just stood there, staring at me with this look I had never seen before. Not anger. Not smugness. Just defeat. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I just kept driving. That night, I got a text from an old coworker. "Dude, business is tanking. They lost 3 more contracts last month. Your dad had to take out another loan. I give it a year before they shut down or sell. I stared at the message for a long time, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction. Justice. Maybe even a little pity. But all I felt was nothing. It didn't matter anymore. A week later, Mom tried to call again. I didn't answer. I already knew what she was going to say. That Dad was struggling. That Matt was overwhelmed. That the family needed me. And I already knew my answer. Kate and I were getting ready to leave for the weekend, planning a hiking trip out of town, when she saw my phone light up. She looked at the screen, then up at me, waiting to see what I'd do. I smiled, turned it over so the screen was face down, and grabbed my bag. Let's go. The best revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It wasn't getting an apology. It wasn't even watching them fail. It was moving on and never looking back. And for the first time in my life, I was completely free.